Good afternoon. Despite improved generation and the return of a fourth unit at Akosombo Dam, power supply remains unstable as fresh outages hit parts of the southern sector, with the Electricity Company of Ghana rolling out another round of cuts. Energy Minister John Junapo on Tuesday night revealed that an additional unit at Akosombo has successfully been restored to operation, describing it as an encouraging step that strengthens power generation. Right, and those are excerpts of that particular statement he released on your screen right now. It says, I can confirm that earlier today, the third unit at Akosombo was successfully put into operation. This milestone will improve power generation and enhance supply reliability. The minister continued to say that it also reflects our continued commitment to maintaining a resilient power system. The technical team is currently working diligently to bring on the fourth unit. This progress underscores our resolve to come out of this unfortunate fire incident stronger, with a renewed focus on stability and reliability in power supply. All right, so that is what the minister released on his Facebook page last night. Well, however, just this morning, ECG released a new round of timetable indicating expected outages across the southern sector, with Accra West, parts of the eastern region and the Ashanti region among the hardest hit. My colleague James Aveji is joining me in studio with details of that particular release. And James, which areas are expected to go off today?
Ken, hundreds of communities across the western region, eastern region, Ashanti as well as Accra areas. For instance, I've been looking at the chart, and so they contain the time schedules for both today and tomorrow, Thursday, in 14 separate notice releases. You know the code card type of release they do. I count 14 of them. If you take the eastern region, for instance, from 6 a.m. to 12 noon this afternoon, a total of 143 communities were expected to go off the grid. And so as far as those communities are concerned, by now, their power should have been restored. Just to go through a few of them, Asamankesi Township is supposed to go off. We have Mpraesu, Ofuasi, Ayurebi, and all of those areas are now expected to have their lights back because the schedule is between 6 a.m. to 12 noon. If you go to the eastern region again, the second schedule is from 12 noon to 6 p.m., which means that those areas, as we speak, are expected to be off right now, and those are 74 different communities also in the eastern region that are expected to also go off from 12 noon to 6 p.m. currently as we speak, also in the eastern region. If you come to the Ashanti region, a total of 19 communities are expected to go off from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m., which means that 12 minutes away from 2 p.m. now, those areas should have their lights back. Chirano, Nambro, Subri, Anyaso, Achiase, Kwame Chrome, Bibiani, Mansim Gold Mining Company is also expected to come back as we speak. Kotokrom and all those areas, Agogoso, are all expected to be back by now. And so for those in those areas, they can tell us whether their lights are back as we speak or otherwise. If you continue to Accra West, hundreds of communities were also scheduled to go off from 6 a.m. to 12 noon this afternoon. The second schedule is also from 12 a.m. to 6 a.m., which means that midnight today, some communities are expected to also go off in Accra West areas, including Bayard, Odogono, Aoshi, and its environs, all the way to Atieku, part of Soweto, and Shukura, are all parts of New Fadama, are all expected to go off from 12 a.m. This midnight to 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. It extends all the way to, I mean, the Accra West alone has about 6 separate notice of power outages being shared, including at least 60-70 communities on each. And so you can multiply that 60-70 by 6, and you know the number of communities that are expected to go off as we speak between today and tomorrow. So that's what the schedule look like. While some have their lights back by 12 o'clock, 2 o'clock as we speak, others are expected to go off from 6 p.m. to 12 a.m. and others also going off from 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. tomorrow morning when the schedule resumes.
James, I'm getting scared because I've seen another one which contains Accra East, and it contains the area that I am at.
That you live.
Yes, that is supposed to go off from 6 p.m. to 12 midnight. And the challenge is that in my area, even if they release these schedules, the schedules are not followed. You can be there and then it will go off at 9 a.m. and then it comes back the next day. But let's see.
The interesting thing is that apart from you and Kofi, who have personal stories to tell, I fortunately am not part of those.
I know you live in a very plush neighborhood.
And for the information, it's not nowhere close to Cantonment, East Legon, and Trasacco and the rest. It's also part of those fortunate, less privileged communities who are.
Good for you. As we speak right now, you are not one of the privileged few in this country who have stable electricity and water at the same time. Right. Meanwhile, fresh analysis from Joy News Research shows Ghana has not met peak demand since the beginning of the year, with load shedding expected to continue even after full repair works at Akosombo are completed. And head of research here at Joy News, Isaac Ofiejaye, is joining us in the studio with details of that particular revelation. And Isaac, we understand the situation improved yesterday with a 4th unit coming on stream. What is the data telling you in terms of the operational deficit?
So we can confirm, based on the available data that we have, that the situation in terms of power generation has improved, but there is still a significant shortfall between average peak demand, or the demand even as at yesterday, versus the average peak demand, or the average peak supply versus demand even as of yesterday. After the 4th units came on stream yesterday, what we can confirm is that our peak demand rose, or peak generation rose to 3,496, 3,497. That was the peak demand yesterday. Average generation in terms of power yesterday, after we had some of the plants units coming on board, and the 4th one also coming on board, was hovering around 3,050. That was the average power generation yesterday, supply. But demand at peak still remains, according to the Energy Ministry, 4,300. Yesterday's peak supply was 3,490, which means that even as at yesterday, with the 4th unit being installed, you still had a deficit, if you're comparing peak supply versus peak demand, of 800 megawatts at least to be shared yesterday. And so if you slept in darkness, you should know that we still have significant gap in terms of demand versus supply. And if you look at Akosombo alone in terms of its power generation, just looking at yesterday, in the morning, we know Akosombo dependably can produce 900 megawatts, holding all other factors constant. Yesterday morning, Akosombo was producing 225 out of its 900 megawatts, or the 1,200 installed capacity. In the afternoon, the situation improved because demand had improved. Akosombo brought on board 300 megawatts. And in the evening, after the minister confirmed that we had a 4th unit online, Akosombo's, generation improved from 300 megawatts to 420. But even after this fourth unit coming on board, we can confirm to you that the 4 units that are currently producing power at the Akosombo, Akosombo Dam are producing below full capacity. Because what we know according to grid code data is that 1 unit of Akosombo can produce at least 150 megawatts of power a day. Yesterday, the highest we saw was 420 for all 4. So if you strike the average and you compare it to the daily average, what that tells you is that each unit, as of yesterday in terms of average, was producing around 79 megawatts, which means that even if you use 100, almost all the 4 units are currently producing below capacity at Akosombo. And previous data, even before the fire outbreak that ravaged the substation, showed that Akosombo was producing below full capacity. And Ken, I can confirm to you that we have enough and sufficient data to prove that since beginning of the year, we have never produced enough power to meet our so-called peak demand of 4,300 or 4,400, which grid code data that we have even projects higher of 4,700 in terms of peak demand. And what we can also confirm to you that there are currently so many data that we know about our energy sector that just exists on paper. In real life or in our real world or in real generation, so many things do not exist. And one is the margin or the reserve margin of 18% that we've been putting across almost every year. This year, the crisis of Akosombo has exposed that and has made us understand that we don't have any headroom anymore in terms of power generation. And should any of our power plants, whether hydro or thermal, go off, we simply have a deficit on our hand to do load shedding. So we can confirm to you that since the beginning of the year, we have never, ever produced power enough to meet our peak demand of 4,400 as communicated by the Energy Ministry, because the data that we have checked shows that the highest we have produced this year was around 4,126, which is not enough to meet the 4,400 demand as communicated by the Energy Ministry. And so this tells you that if you do the annual average, peak production or peak generation versus demand shows an average shortfall of at least 444 megawatts, with even Akosombo blasted at about 70% capacity. That is why we are concluding that even if Akosombo is restored to full capacity, we still expect at least some 400 megawatts of power to be shared if we do not solve the issues that existed before the fire of 24th April that took away about 900 megawatts of Akosombo that was made available, before the fire incident.
Isaac Ofeje is the head of research here at Joinis. Thank you very much, Isaac. And senior research and policy analyst at the Institute for Energy Security, Hatche, Derek Emmanuel, is joining me via the telephone lines with more. Derek, there's been an announcement of a 4th unit back online, but it appears that this is even the time that we are seeing a lot of regions going to experience power outages per the new timetable that have been released by the Electricity Company of Ghana. Why is that?
All right. Good afternoon, and thanks for the opportunity once again. So if you're talking about an improvement when it comes to the units that have been restored, and then you are saying that this is also the time that it looks like there are more, places going to experience power outages. Well, you want to refer to the data that was just, maybe mentioned by your colleague, where he said that there has been an improvement in terms of power generation. And so if you compare what has been generated yesterday as compared to 3 days ago, you'd have seen that there is an improvement in it. That improvement in megawatts shows that there is enough power that such people, even if there were to be somebody who was experiencing some power outages, should have had power restored. And so for that assertion, I will not be able to accept it. Probably there is a different source to that. That might not be the reason for power evacuation as a result of the 4 units that have been brought on board.
And now we're also getting the confirmation that we have never, since the 10th of this year, been able to produce enough power to meet peak demand. So even if the Akosombo substation is up and running, we're still going to experience doomsday.
Well, yesterday I tried to explain the same scenario that in terms of power generation, power is not like something you have to generate in excess and then who is supposed to evacuate the power. Anytime that there must be power that is generated, it must correspond with the demand that is available and what the system can offtake or what the system can contain. And so you just do not wake up and be like, okay, I have a capacity of maybe 4,500 megawatts, and so by hook or crook, I must generate power 4,500 megawatts. If the system or the grid cannot contain and evacuate 4,500 megawatts, then it means that there is going to be higher voltages, and you see power tripping off, and it will affect or cause a whole lot of damage. And so anytime that there is power generated, it must balance the demand that is available. He spoke about a period where they were able to generate power above 4,100 megawatts. That shows that there is always a possibility to be able to generate more power. If the possibility is not there, then we can all question that. But if they have the capacity to generate, then we must ask, the demand that is available, which we all know that at peak demand sometimes it goes higher, does the system have the capacity to be able to contain the power? If it doesn't have the system, there's no way the generator will generate more power whilst he knows that the system cannot contain it. So we must have a critical and honest discussion about this thing, whether we can generate power, and which I know that we can generate power, but that power that we are talking about, the generation, can the system contain it? And if the system contains it, what is the forecasted demand such that we are not able to meet that forecasted demand, and then we want to now maybe ascribe the doomsday to technical challenges? That would have been an honest discussion, and that would have come from GRIDCO. Even though they've given out the data shows that there's a system peak yesterday in the evening. This morning, it was quite lower than yesterday evening. So let GRIDCO tell us the forecasted demand. Why are they producing or generating power below maybe the 4,400 that we all see as peak demand? Now, the second point I want to talk about is that the peak demand that has been forecasted around 4,400 megawatts, it is not like it's supposed to happen every day across the whole year. No, sometimes it is just one off day, maybe 2 off days. You can get it maybe 3 times or 4 times in the whole year. And then you should also know that the demand for power comes with the weather. And so when you have the weather, when there is a very shiny or sunny day, then it means that there is a higher consumption of power. That is when a lot of people turn on their gadgets and whole lot of other things. But when you see that the rain begins to set in, the demand for power reduces, just like the weather as it is. The demand for power reduces. And so you don't expect that the generator will generate power even when the weather is quite cool, and be expecting that because we've heard that there is a peak demand of 4,400 megawatts. No, they are always balancing the system to ensure stability. This is what we all know, and that is the explanation that maybe, if anything, GRIDCO should be able to explain more to.
That means that despite an improvement in our power generation, we still are not out of the woods yet.
If you say we are not still out of the woods yet, I will ascribe that to the kind of upgrades that are needed to be able to evacuate any power that will be generated.
Yes.
Because the main reason why we are not able to evacuate the whole power is because our system is not stable to be able to support any power that is being generated. And so until we are done with these upgrades, now the upgrade that you are seeing is from the distribution side. Now, bear in mind that GRIDCO can also not transmit all the power that is also if they generate all. And so even if you are talking about the distributor, ECG, having some upgrades in terms of transformer, trust you me, if GRIDCO, if the generator, the IPP, the VRA and co, all decide to even generate power about 4,700 megawatts, if GRIDCO tries that, there will be a breakdown in the system. And so they are equally also managing what they can transmit And that is what also gets to the distributor. And when it gets to the distributor also tries to see what he can take to people's houses and their businesses.
So what's the best way out now that we have a bit of an improvement in our power generation? How should the power distribution be like so that it doesn't affect so many people as it did previously?
All right. So what I said is that one thing that we need to do is to have a simultaneous outlook for it, simultaneous solution to it, because you will not want to feel like solving the distribution challenges. Then you wait for a period of time, and you say you are coming to solve the transmission challenges. Because what is being transmitted is what gets to the distribution stage. And so let us have a simultaneous upgrade of all the systems. It might not be convenient for anybody, but when you do it, it is more realistic and then it becomes more efficient than waiting to say that let me improve that of the distribution, and then after a period of time, I come back to now improve the upgrades of the transmission system. That will still need to do so. And that is what guardians are looking out for. So if there's anything, if there's any investment, if the resources are there and then the gadgets are there, let us try to do it simultaneously. At least there should be an efficient way to change over some of the grid systems and the transformers.
You're a policy analyst with IES and a researcher as well. From where you sit, how long do you think this issue is going to last?
It's supposed to, if anything, the distribution, by a maximum a year, they should be able to upgrade most of the transformers. And if they are to work concurrently with GridCo, then at least after a year, we should not be having issues when it comes to transmission lines and the distributional challenges.
Some will say a year is too far, isn't it?
A year is too far. That is quite even ambitious, because if you want to go by a planned way, it might even go beyond that. But if you want to work around the clock, whilst, like we've seen in the case of the Akosombo, and the engineers were just on site, and then within the shortest time, they've been able to bring on board 4 units within the space of time. What it means is that the engineers do have the capacity. The local people have the capacity, and they'll be able to turn the fortunes for the betterment of Ghana. And so if there's anything, you know that this is a real challenge, let us upgrade. Let us replace some of the transformers and go. You know that this is a problem. Whatever thing that you think that needs to be done, let us do it around the clock and then be able to have some respite going forward. Other than that, you continue to manage it and it might not end us very well.
And within that year period that you have suggested, of course, anything can happen. And you are speaking from your point as an analyst. I get that. But going forward, within that period that we're still waiting, how do we ensure that if the light is finally back on, we are able to meet peak demand? We're able to generate enough power to meet peak demands?
All right. So when I talk about generating power, what I know is that if all our thermal plants are brought on board, if all our hydro plants are brought on board, and then the renewable sources, we should be able to generate more power to be able to even meet our peak demand and have some for export. And so when it comes to the generation, what will be needed for the generation is a constant fuel supply.
Right.
And a constant fuel supply, we are lucky that we have a combined system which can either depend on the light crude or depend on the natural gas or even LPG or the others. We always have an alternative to any of the fuel sources that are used for the power generation. And so it means that we should make the fuel sources readily available. And the good thing is that Ghanaians are also being taxed for 1 Ghana cedis in terms of the fuel cost for power generation. And so I'm not sure anybody will want to give any Ghanaian an excuse that we do not have the money to be able to purchase the fuel to generate power for Ghanaians to use. So the generation side, I do not see too much of an issue there. If you want to also bear it out, you realize that the IPPs have also not come out to say that they are more or less the government is owing them or they have a hindrance or a barrier in terms of power generation. Unless those who might have a planned maintenance schedule where maybe get to a period of time their plants must go under shutdown or maybe for maintenance work. Those ones will give notice ahead of time. And so outside these technical challenges and then the planned maintenances, I'm not sure that they have any challenge when it comes to power generation. That one, there is no fault for it. That one, the government do not have any excuse than to generate power. What is the problem is the transmitter. GridCo must be able to be up and doing And from the energy minister, it means that grid co-expansion is not going to happen anytime soon. Likely it's going to be after the World Cup. And if it's going to be after the World Cup, then it means that we still have a lot of time that not all the power that is being generated can be evacuated. And that will affect the distributor as well. ECG is having an upgrade. Yes, that is good. But what it means is that even if they have the upgrade, if we are not able to generate the full power and evacuate it to the distributor, then the Ghanaians will not be able to get the full complement of power that we all expect. But in the nutshell, power cannot be generated whilst it cannot be consumed. There must be a balance between the power that is being generated and then the power that is being consumed.
Hatcher, Derek, Emmanuel, always great to have you on the show. Thank you very much. Well, tensions are escalating across communities within the operational areas of Adamus Resources Limited as a deep rift emerges between some traditional authorities and sections of the youth following the revocation of the company's mining lease. While some chiefs are calling for the immediate reinstatement of the lease, describing the decision as detrimental to local economic activity, many residents, largely the youth, are pushing back strongly. They argue that the company failed to prioritize community development and accuse it of neglecting its responsibilities, including alleged destruction of farmlands and water bodies. My colleague Inathalia Kwanzaa has more in this report.
Cladded in red headbands with matching bands wrapped around their wrists and necks and speaking in their native Nzema language, residents of 4 communities pour libation invoking the gods of their land. They are calling on the spirits to ensure that if government ever restores the concession of Adamus Resources Limited, the gold beneath their soil should vanish. For many, the revocation of a mining company's license would be met with concerns or uncertainty. But here in Salma, Aria, Akango, and Wale, it is a moment of relief, almost celebration.
And thanks to the President and the government as whole for their commitment towards Adamus issue. We are so happy that on Sunday we heard the news on social media that government has revoked Adamus licenses. We are so happy because in terms of Adamus, the company is there, but no efficiency of benefit from catchment areas. Adamus have been operating since 2007, but for me to point to just one project in my letter area, I can't point it out. So we are so happy, and we are calling on the government to handle over the company to those that they can handle it well. That will benefit the Salama community and catchment areas within Elembele and Everajura.
They accuse the company of degrading their environment, destroying farmlands and polluting water bodies, leaving many struggling to survive.
Suffering in Salama here. Since I came here to be a committee chairman, there is no any help which Adamus people have given to us. Even though when we need anything, when we go there to plead them, we find it difficult.
Adamus, we wished Adamus had left the system, but if it has come at this time, we are very much happy. Government should go on and make sure that the negotiation is done.
It is a minister to Sana Moya, Yanania dream pa. It's I said, Omokra can say, in few duetino, almost I bet Nasi. And yeah, I am to say for then so you buy a free say buy in Ponfield 9. Omunya who be at Sa, Yanti Bibiasa, that is almost fire and say a Bobby.
Traditional leaders say the spiritual ritual reflects the depth of anger and frustration among the people. Residents insist the government must not reverse its decision. They warn that any attempt to return the concession to Adamus Resources Limited could trigger renewed resistance. For Joy News, Inathalia Kwanzaa, Salma.
Still watching the pulse here on Joy News, and in the last few hours, the company at the center of the controversy, Adamus Resources Limited, has issued a statement responding to allegations that it is involved in illegal mining activities. And here's the statement on our touch screen, and it says Adamus Resources Limited has rejected claims that it is involved in illegal mining, stating that it is a fully licensed Ghanaian company operating in compliance with the Minerals and Mining Act 2006, Act 703. The company argues that it has instead been dealing with persistent illegal mining activities within its concessions at Akango, Salman, and Nkrofo. It says it has consistently reported these activities to authorities and supported security interventions, which led to arrest and the seizure of equipment. Adamus expresses concern that ownership of seized mining equipment has not been properly investigated. Despite available evidence, it also notes that it has refused multiple requests from individuals seeking to use its concessions for unauthorized community or small-scale mining. The company continues to insist that allegations against it should be viewed in this context, emphasizing that a regulated firm cannot reasonably engage in illegal mining on its own licensed land. On the legal front, Adamus highlights that any action affecting its mining rights must follow due process under the law, warning that failure to do so undermines regulatory certainty and the rule of law. It further cautions that how indigenous companies are treated, especially one led by a woman, could negatively impact investor confidence and access to capital in Ghana's mining sector. Adamus maintains that it has evidence of illegal activities and denies facilitating bail for arrested individuals. It continues to say that it reiterates its commitment to transparency, lawful operations, and cooperation with credible investigations. Well, let's get talking, and I have in the studio Director of Communications at the Lands and Natural Resources Ministry, Pakasi Shandov. Shandov, welcome to the program. I'm very much interested in the last but one paragraph where Adamus says that this could aid in the loss of confidence, investor confidence in our local economy, because this is a local industry, a local firm that is under attack. Is that a point that the Lands and Natural Resources Ministry agrees with?
Not at all, Ken.
Why?
But first off, good afternoon to your very good self and the entirety of our audience who are connected across the globe. It is unfortunate if the response or the action of the ministry in the very first place is characterized as an attack. It is in no way an attack. Indeed, it is only a firm enforcement of the abiding regulations that govern mining and the extractive industry in our part of the country. Now, when the conversation about investors come up, more often than not, recourse is given to the financial inputs that investors would normally put into any business entity. But typical investors, and indeed across the globe, all investors are not only interested in their financial input or economic investment. They also want to invest in a place or in a jurisdiction where the laws are fervently and efficaciously applied. They do not want to go into any region where there are no recourse to appropriate regulations. And so if an investor, all right, saw, for example, what the lands minister has done, that is taking the bold step to revoke a license because of irregularities, actually that investor under the circumstances would feel confident, and then that investor will be happy, because then the investor will start thinking, okay, in this particular jurisdiction, in this part of the world, their business transactions are done within the parameters and the borders of established rules and regulations. So it is not in any way, the action taken against Adamus in any way, it's not in any way going to affect investor confidence whatsoever. We are enforcing the laws, and enforcement honestly does not deter investors whatsoever.
I'll refer back to their statement again. Here it says it has noted that it has refused multiple requests from individuals seeking to use its concessions for unauthorized community or small-scale mining. So this tries to suggest that they have refused and denied community pressure to use these concessions as a site for illegal mining, which you accuse them of.
The report from the Chief Inspector of Mines suggests clearly otherwise. Now, I indicated 2 days ago that the nature of the report that warranted this substantive revocation was done in 2 separate layers. The first was the fact-finding mission, which was embarked on by the regional outfit at the area in question, by the Minerals Commission. There was first the regional reports that was submitted to the ministry, and which was subsequently corroborated by the national high-scale level interrogation. So a regional team was deployed from the very outset, and then they came with their report. And then the minister, in the exercise of due diligence, wanting to know that indeed the report is factual and accurate, commissioned another team at the national level to go and verify the initial claims. And all of that pointed to this anomaly, that indeed portions of the concession had been illegally, as it were, ceded to other entities to do mining. Now, that arrangement is actually practicable in mining jurisdiction, except that if you want to do it in the first place, it needs, as a matter of necessity, express prior ministerial approval. So let me import this analogy, for instance. Let's assume that you are, the two of us, I mean, you look richer, so let's say that you are the landlord, I am a tenant. Ken, if you rented an apartment to me, and I wanted to convert the apartment to, let's say, a restaurant, or I needed to give portions to any other interested party for whatever reason it may be, it would agree that it would be appropriate for me to revert and say that I want to do X, Y, Z, or I want to make X, Y, Z a modification to the structure that you leased to me. All right? I mean, common sense, we can all agree that that is what would apply. So in this particular case too, the lease given to Adamus, I mean, is subjected to the same rule, in fact, grounded in law, that if you have a concession, if you own a mineral right whatsoever, and you want to make any transfer, any adjustment, or any form of renegotiation, or by bringing in, whatever party to be involved in the business venture, you need to, as a matter of necessity, write to the sector minister, address it to him, seek his prior consent before you proceed with that arrangement. Unfortunately, Adamus did not. And if you read the full complement of the report, you see that these were flagrant violations to in that particular respect. And so even for that, if we were to stand on that alone, that is more than enough reason for revocation. Even if we were not minded to look at the massive environmental pollution. The fact that portions were ceded without recourse to the provision of express ministerial approval, I mean, we were good to go, and that is exactly what the minister stands by.
The issue has now escalated to the community level, where the youth in the area and the chiefs in the area are divided, and rightly so. Right. While some are calling for the reinstatement of the revocation of the licenses, some say it is good news. Does that not worry the ministry at all?
Well, for every decision, I mean, you would have split opinions, all the time. Every good decision, I mean, in fact, every good or bad decision, whatever the case is, there would be people who would agree, there would be people who would express reservations and depart from what is currently prevailing. And so that is normal. But what stands and what is important, or what is relevant to the discourse, is the facts as against the law. The facts of the investigation proved that there had been manifest violations, which were not grounded in law, and action has appropriately been taken. And I want to believe that even if you were to run a sentiment analysis, if you were to diagnose the concerns from the community, the host communities, you realize that if you were to equate by way of numbers, majority are actually in support. Because it is important to note that the genesis of the agitations against Adamus didn't even start from today. And I'm sure as a well-read journalist, you may apprise yourself of the facts. Ken, you see that, look, there are transgressions precede even this particular dispensation. It's something that has been happening time and time. But we come into power, there is a firm sector minister, Honorable Akufo-Addo. He says that, look, under my watch, we are going to enforce the laws to the latter. It doesn't matter who the owner is, the ties of the owner. All of those conversations are largely inconsequential. So like we said, I said a couple of days ago, if you are a mining entity, whether in the small scale sector or in the large scale spectrum, as long as you violate the laws, the whip will be cracked.
What's the status of the investigation with regards to Adamus?
In respect of this particular issue?
Yes.
Yeah, so the status of the investigation is what basically...
You've concluded the investigation?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, the ministers, like I said, it was a two-tier engagement. First, the regional outfits, then the national deployment by the minister, because what the minister didn't want to do was to have taken a decision that did not reflect the fact. I mean, he is the minister. He's been given the mandate. If he's going to revoke any license, he should be sure that he's doing it appropriately. So the regional report came, commissioned the national deployment. They also came with the same feedback. Independently, the minister interrogated the facts, and it became apparent that, the license had to be revoked. And perhaps this may be needless to add, but it's important to note that Adamus has actually reached out to the ministry following this particular revocation, asking that, how do we coin that? Is it temper justice with mercy? Is that how it's said?
Yeah, how do we resolve the issue? They want to resolve the issue amicably.
Exactly. So if clearly they did not have if the violations were not evidenced, backed by facts, we would not be having this particular conversation. And so the act of the minister was appropriate, grounded in law and the facts.
But some could argue that that's not an admission of defeat. They see that between them and the ministry, you have an upper hand. If you say that you're not going to allow them to do it, regardless of what they do, you're still going to stand by your words. That's perhaps why they're being tough outside and trying to negotiate with you on the inside.
If I'm taller than you, if I happen to be taller than you, and I were to bully you, for example, all right, and you feel that my action is very, very violent, okay, and you have reason to believe that I didn't treat you well, I think the appropriate thing for you to do is to, go and report me, not to come and plead with me to stop slapping you. So basically the point I'm making is that if they believe that their conduct during the period under review didn't offend any of the laws, I think there's an appropriate forum for them to go and express their reservations and have the matter resolved.
There are concerns that this revocation of the lease for Adamus has some political undertones, that the ministry is planning on giving this lease to a different mining firm. That's why you deliberately revoked their license. Is there any truth in that?
Absolutely not. I mean, what would be the... Absolutely. Of course, these suggestions are likely to come up when actions of this nature are taken, but we need to interrogate them for their merits and for their truthfulness. Now, by way of the revocation, okay, jobs are going to be significantly affected. It's also important to note that this particular entity sits in the constituency of the sector minister himself. And so if there is any form of wrong, for the want of a better word, within his own jurisdiction, and he exercises action, that should tell you that there cannot even be any form of parochial interest, because, like I'm saying, jobs are going to be affected. Is it the case that why we want to advance the argument that the sector minister wants his constituents to get out of jobs? Certainly not. But the other truth to it is that now that the revocation, as we speak, is currently standing, you cannot allow the mine to sit unattended to. So definitely there will be an arrangement in store to, as it were, resume the operationalization of the mines in the foreseeable future. When it comes to that, again, the minister would just follow the books and ensure that the appropriate thing is done. But the truth of the matter is that it is completely false. I mean, the suggestions we have heard that even, look, there are people who say that there are some parochial undertones and there is a grand scheme and an orchestration to ensure that the lease goes to somebody else, all of that.
The lease goes absolutely to EMP.
Absolutely not.
So there's never going to be a time that this will be transferred to EMP?
I'm saying that it has been revoked. The next thing that would follow subsequently under the authority of the minister, grounded in law, is for an appropriate process for the transfer, for another capable hands to manage it. That would be done. It is not, there's nobody in mind currently who is going to occupy it as we speak. Neither is there any pre-planned arrangements. But I understand why the EMP conversation would come up. I mean, we've heard the propagandists and the opposition and many critics say that the President of the Republic and his immediate enclave are interested in grabbing the country. All of those are not true. I think, and this is where sometimes I like to amplify the disposition of the sector minister again, and this is not because I work with him. The man Akufo-Addo is truly independent. And if I say it, of course, those who would hear may want to say that, oh yes, you work with him, so definitely you sing his praises. But the truth of the matter is that in the embodiment of his character, independence is a core trait. He is not moved or manipulated as perhaps some people are. So there is no pre-planned arrangement anywhere whatsoever. That should be utterly discarded.
My colleague Nathalia Kwanzaa in the region told us earlier today that most of the constituents are happy that this lease has been revoked because they really were not happy with Adamus being there.
Absolutely.
Was it the pressure from the community that necessitated this revocation? Was it the pressure from the community?
I certainly not. Now, the feedback from host communities are important in the decisions that are taken at the ministerial level, all right? If the minister wants to, that is why even in our mining laws, if you want to acquire a lease, as a matter of necessity, the notice has to be published within the community for a certain period of days. If there are no objections that are raised, then the rest of the transaction can proceed. So that is effectively to say that communal voices are relevant. But in this particular case, that was not the trigger. Indeed, that was not in any way a factor whatsoever. The sole and absolute consideration was the violations as evidenced by the inspection conducted by the Chief Inspector of Mines. But if the locals are agitated, that should also tell us something. Why would the locals be agitated? There are so many host communities where large-scale mining companies are thriving and prospering. Why are we not getting that kind of feedback from those jurisdictions? It sends a signal that indeed their acts were not favorable. And so let us just say that the conduct, or let me say the sentiments of the locals coincided with the facts, and the blast was accordingly ordered.
Just yesterday, I'm reading an article on our website, My Joy Online, that 18 individuals were arrested by NIMOS, which you also speak for.
Right.
What is their status now? Where are they?
Right. So for every arrest that is effected by the National Anti-Illegal Mining Operations Secretariat, they are subsequently passed on to the appropriate quarters for onward prosecution to commence. Let us bear in mind that NIMOS's role is to enforce the laws, and in the enforcement, arrests also accompany same. But when it comes to prosecutions, that doesn't lie within the ambit or the defined job description and jurisdiction of NIMOS. So when anybody is arrested in that regard, those persons accordingly are handed over to the immediate police set up in that area. So for this one, for example, I can say that all those who are arrested, the number you mentioned, the 8, and they've all been accordingly handed over to the police. But talking about arrest and prosecutions, permits me to import and say this. There's been widespread national concern, and we welcome it, that look, over the period, NIMOS seems to have arrested a lot of people, except that we have not seen attendant prosecutions. And that is beginning to, for most people, and these concerns are actually very genuine, we concede. For most people, it is beginning to look like the arrests of NIMOS, for the want of a better word, constitutes a charade. Because if you arrest and we don't see anybody, then the question is, what is the essence of the arrest? But here is the point. Like I said, NIMOS doesn't facilitate the prosecutions. But also when you look at the prosecutorial setup of the country, and Ken, you have followed court proceedings, you would agree, if you go to even our courts, there are cases that dates way back to so many years, because the legal justice dispensation system is a bit convoluted and tardy. So this is the government approach. Government is saying that, look, because already there's a backlog of so many cases that have not been well and properly and conclusively attended to, let us now have a dispensation where materially we would be able to expedite action on NIMOS's arrest. So what are we doing? As I speak to you, Cabinet has given approval for the establishment of specialized tribunals to deal with illegal mining offenses. We have mentioned this before, but in creating this structure, you need to ensure that, look, there are no gaps or loopholes in the framework that we are bringing. I want to believe that we are in the month of April. Okay, April is almost expired. I want to believe that before we get into the next half of the year, these tribunals would have been properly established. And upon their establishment, all the case dockets will be opened. All those who have to be prosecuted will be accordingly prosecuted. Look, nobody will be spared. Yes, we've heard, again, critics say that, look, you cough numbers, XYZ people have been arrested, yet we are not seeing the prosecutions. Where are the people and all of that? Of course, their case files are there. Their dockets have not, are not missing, okay? It's just that we want a framework that would ensure that it is a kind of thing. You arrest, they are prosecuted immediately. And the tribunals in our legal system normally help with that kind of facilitation. So everybody, in conclusion, arrested is currently, their documents and their fact sheets and, their chart sheets and all of those are currently very, very safe. At appropriate time, when the tribunals are established, they would be prosecuted accordingly.
So these tribunals, are they starting from the ground up? Are we going to build new physical structures, or are there old court complexes that we are transforming them into fast-track tribunal courts? What is it going to be like?
Well, so in some of the areas where they would be established, of a necessity, new structures would have to be erected. But for some other places, there are structures that can be repurposed for that. You see, all of that fits into the plan, because in creating a tribunal, you're just not looking at the legal instrumentation. No, it goes beyond the legal instrumentation. You also need the structural and presence to say that this is where the matters will be heard and all of that. So yes, there are some places that new ones would have to be erected. There are others that we just have to repurpose some structures. And all of that forms part of the government's commitment to deal decisively with the menace of illegal mining. So if you know an illegal miner anywhere, or anybody has been arrested before, but you are watching and your concern is that, where is this illegal miner? The assurance is that anybody who has once and ever been arrested will be dealt with accordingly with recourse to the relevant laws.
Over the weekend, you alleged on another station that journalists who are involved in Galamsey. You do?
Right. So on that particular matter,
you do? I just want a yes or no answer before you proceed.
The context is very, very important. So permit me to lay out the context of that particular comment. Indeed, it's not a comment that I would even shy away from necessarily. There's no point in doing that. When it comes to the menace of illegal mining, we have said continuously that it is festering and prospering in our parts of the world due to the widespread complicity. When you say widespread complicity, basically we mean that a lot of people from all walks of life are involved. Okay, and so when you create the bracket or the net that a lot of people from all walks of life are involved, really, who can you rope out of that kind of pool? Nobody. So the mention and the emphasis of journalists is not exclusionary. Neither is it, Ken, I am a journalist. You are a journalist. So there will be no point that I would want to, as it were, deem the light of the profession or mischaracterize them in any way. The point is that, look, if you read the NIMOS security briefings and you are privy to, their operational reports and all of that, you realize that some of the communities, NIMOS embarks on operations, and the people who are pleading and some of the people who are, making interventions for the corporates are very interesting people, even at the local level, very interesting paramount people or significant voices who ordinarily should be supporting NIMOS. So that is basically the nature of the widespread publicity. It has become a national crisis, and if it's a national crisis, then logically it presupposes that nationally lots of stakeholders are involved in the fight. But there is also the commitment of governments to deal with it, in addition to so many journalists and good people of our country, pastors, imams, and so many other good-minded people who are supporting. But of course, you can always not have the balance right. Some people would have parochial interests, others who have the nation at heart. But together, we are still navigating the waters, and we'll get to a place where illegal mining will be a thing of the past.
You really did not answer my question. I asked you, because you were quite emphatic over the weekend that journalists who are involved.
Yeah, that's the same thing I'm saying. I'm saying that.
So are there journalists that are involved?
I wanted to make this deduction for yourself. All right, I made the comment. And there's no need to pussyfoot the issue or sketch around the question. I am saying that the nature of involvement is widespread.
Right.
Indeed, the complicity is widespread. So let us take this. Okay, if I say the complicity is widespread, let's take this sheet of paper. I'm saying that the complicity is widespread. How many people can you put in that particular circle? Think of every and anybody within our social fabric. And so it's not, the emphasis and the focus shouldn't just be about journalists. Think of everybody.
Pakwesi, I'm asking that question because you mentioned that journalists who are engaged in Galamsey. The president not long ago also said that some members within his own party are also engaged in Galamsey.
That confirms the widespread complicity.
Let me land. So that presupposes that the people who we've vested the power into to deal with the menace know the people who are engaged in the illegal mining menace, but are not going after them. It's like me knowing that you are a perpetrator of a particular crime, and I'm sitting on it, and the police is around asking of who is involved in this crime, and I sit on it. Is that not a crime in itself? If the president knows that some members in his party are involved in Galamsey, if you know that there are journalists who are involved in Galamsey, and you are not telling us who, you're not giving us leads to arrest those people, really, you are aiding and abetting, are you not? You are the president.
Absolutely not. Not equate to the level of the president, but absolutely not. Now, that comment from the president, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, is a comment that I've had cause to say that should be roundly applauded by all well-meaning people. The reason is that in the past, in past dispensations, we have had those who mattered, leaders who mattered, coming out publicly to exonerate without proof persons who had been implicated in all sorts of illegal mining activities. But here and now, under the current administration, I mean, is it not so much an act of confidence and an act of honesty and transparency for the President of the Republic himself to admit on national television that there are persons within his immediate political enclave who are also complicit? Now, that kind of admission is a good starting point. I'm going to tell you why. Because most of the time, what has been happening, okay, and you would bear with me, let's go back to 2017 to 2024. Were we not in this country where, I mean, like I'm saying, people who mattered were shielding political appointees? But now we have gotten to a stage where there is no shielding whatsoever. Now, transparency is what is fronting the fight. So the president then makes that admission. Now to your substantive question. Okay, the logic is that if the president, who has absolute security briefing, knows as a matter of exactitude that there are persons within even the NDC, as it were, who are involved, where are they and why are they not coming out? I've always been explaining with this particular analogy that if you want to grab the if you go to the sea, I don't know if you have had any fishing expedition before, but look, if you go to any beach, any seaside whatsoever, if you want to get those who are the kingpins or the big fishes, so to speak, more often than not, you not find them at the surface. They are usually in the belly of the ocean. And in the belly of the ocean, I mean, from the shore to the belly of the ocean, you require a bit more time to walk and, I mean, swim and navigate to that particular point. So it will take a bit of time. So those kingpins, in grabbing them, and you need a lot of tact, you need a lot of time, and you need a lot of intelligence. But we can start from the point of the transparency. If the president has been transparent commendably and saying that, look, even I know people who, XYZ people who are involved, that shows you there's a certain kind of political willingness which initially didn't exist. So if we have had the admission, then why wouldn't the action follow? Think about it. Why wouldn't the action follow if the admission is there? Because you know the president could have, like we have seen in the past, come out to say that there's nobody in NDC who is involved in illegal mining. He could have done that. But in his character and embodiment of transparency and truth, he didn't do that. Have we not seen, I mean, people who mattered say that their party members are not involved, even when there was evidence to the contrary? Ken, haven't we seen that before? We have. So can't we see the contrast? Can't we see the differentiation in political will which this administration has that was never present? So yes, we can start from the point of that transparency and hope that we'll get to that point where what would accompany the transparency will be relevant action. And I want to assure that the Sector Minister, Honorable Akufo-Addo, is committed to that. Thankfully, the president also, and has always been, like he said in his transparent comment, so we would have the results we are always looking for.
We pray for you, the minister. We pray for those fighting for Galamsey to end, because it affects all of us.
Absolutely.
If it continues to persist,
absolutely,
it affects our water, food, everything.
Absolutely.
So I wish you all the best. Thanks.
Thank you. And we want to commend the media too for their continuous exposés and the reportage on the Minister of Illegal Mining as well.
Pakwesi Shandov is the Director of Communications at the Lands and Natural Resources Ministry. You're still watching the polls on Joy News. Return from the break with more. Don't go anywhere. Hello again. The government of Ghana is standing its grounds in the face of pressure from the Trump administration following cabinet's decision to reject a $109 million health aid package. The support under the United States government's America First global health strategy would have required Ghana to surrender citizens' health records to the U.S. for 25 years. It also reportedly barred Ghana from questioning how the data is used, including concerns of a possible commercial exploitation by U.S. pharmaceutical companies. Senior editor here at Joy News, Evans Mensah, has been sharing exclusive details of this deal.
And you're right to pay attention to the name because it's focused on America first and not necessarily the countries that will be benefiting. And the way it was structured by the Trump administration, by the way they launched this last year, was in essence to shift the poor countries from a dependence on America to one that they can depend on themselves. And it's focused on tackling a few health challenges like tuberculosis and HIV/AIDS. And the Trump administration, as you know, last year when they took over, scrapped a lot of the aid interventions that the previous government had instituted, and they put this in place instead. Mm-hmm. Now, if the Trump administration was giving you something, they have to get something back. And fundamentally, it was structured to also benefit the American pharmaceutical, the American economy in the disbursement of the funding to the countries that they had targeted. They were not only going to give you money, they were also expecting that the poor countries who were benefiting will also have counterpart funding. In the specific case of Ghana, they were going to give us $109 million, and they were expecting us to contribute $70 million to that. And the $70 million was one that we must provide, or else the deal itself collapses. So that is, in essence, was the America First Global Health Strategy.
Right. Just a bit of clarity. So what? We were supposed to contribute 70 or 60 million, you say, to this amount?
70 million.
Okay.
$70 million as a counterpart funding to this particular initiative and the health aid. I'm
curious, why did Ghana reject the health aid then?
A few reasons. The first one is about a clause in the Memorandum of Understanding that required Ghana to surrender your health data and my health data as well, citizens' health data, to the United States of America. Now, in this particular MOU, it was also very clear that once we surrendered the health data to America, they could choose to do what they want with the health data, including giving the health data to their pharmaceutical companies in the development of drugs, but also in pursuit of commercial purposes. That obviously raised very fundamental questions about data privacy, which didn't sit well with the government. The second reason was that the MOU was unilaterally drafted, according to the sources very close to the negotiations, was unilaterally drafted by the Americans without input from us. So in other words, the Chargé d'Affaires who led this presented the MOU to our health ministry, asking that they sign it within a week, and the pressure was brought to bear for us to sign it. Again, the ministry from our sources then asked that the Americans and Ghana form a joint committee to start the process afresh, as in jointly draft an MOU that will be beneficial and to address the national interest goals of both countries. That again, the U.S. government didn't want to pursue that. Another key issue that again was a factor in our rejection was that part of the clause also required that once drugs developed in the U.S. had been approved by the U.S. Drugs Administration, we could not use our FDA laws and the FDA itself to reassess, reevaluate the drugs once they come together. In other words, we are now opening the Ghanaian market to the flooding of our shores with American-approved drugs.
Yes.
And the FDA would not have any authority to subject those, as the regulatory requirement says in Ghana, to scrutiny before it hits the shelves in the pharmacies that I know you and I, all of us, purchase. That's another issue that our government raised. Finally, the issue about which legal regime will govern the MOU was an issue. It was American legal regime that will govern it, and the country, Ghana, says, well, this is not something that we could assent to.
Well, what has happened since the Ghana stood its ground not to sign this? And this is interesting because in November last year, when you take a detailed read in that agreement, or not even the MOU, that document from the U.S., it says that agreement should be bilateral. This would mean that if the ministry didn't take a careful look and they had signed it, that unilateral would have been paying for it. But today, what is happening?
And you're right. The reason why it was escalated to cabinet So this was a cabinet decision to reject it. The committee surrendered to cabinet for consideration, and our Attorney General actually weighed it and said, in essence, that we can decide to reject it. Now, going forward, the sources tell us that government obviously still values this relationship with America, and they're currently exploring ways of collaborating in other areas of mutual interest that will be beneficial to both sides without the questions of surrendering sovereignty.
Let's get talking, and joining me on Zoom right now is CDD fellow Dr. Kwame Sapon-Asiedu. Dr. Sapon-Asiedu, welcome to the program. In a matter of weeks and months, we've seen a slew of African nations rejecting similar deals from the United States. First of all, let's look at what this deal means for the United States. Why are they giving such deals to African countries, which Ghana has eventually rejected?
Thanks, Kenneth. It's interesting you ask. To understand why they are giving such deals to countries like Ghana or the Global South countries, you need to study the American First Global Health Strategy, which was released on the 4th of September 2025. If you look at the strategy, one of the things and that strategy was signed by the Secretary of State, Mark Rubio, one of the things that the Americans insist on is that there was significant waste in their previous health assistance strategy, and that it wasn't benefiting the United States of America in any way. So they decided that they were going to shift the goalpost in a manner that they can benefit from the health assistance they give to development partners. So that is where they started from. When you read the strategy, and when it came back in out in September, it was clear that any future negotiation was going to put America first, and that there was not going to be anything like free lunch any longer. And so that is where the Americans have started from. And so that is the understanding everyone must get.
We've seen America enter into agreements with countries like Rwanda, DR Congo, and other African countries. And usually it's a threat. They threaten you that, okay, we want you to accept this. We've seen them send migrants to some African countries who are from different countries. They send you that deal, add money, but if you refuse, they threaten you. What is the likely threat we are to receive from the United States resulting from this rejection?
Well, that would be difficult for me to predict, but knowing the way the United States, that is geopolitics, we should expect that there will be pushback. But you see, what I want everyone to understand is that irrespective of the pushback, we should first and foremost understand certain basic things. We are a sovereign country. That should set. There are issues around our health data that are national security data, because within our health data sits our health geography. And what do I mean by our health geography? It includes the prevalence rates of diseases, even medicines we prescribe, prescribing patterns, disease burdens, medication usage, even our national health insurance budget disbursements all sit in there. And there are laws in our country. We have data protection regulations that protect patient identifiable information. So if we are going to simply sit and say there's going to be a pushback, and therefore we're going to lie supine like some lamps, then we are telling ourselves that our laws are not enforceable. We have to look at is the fact that before the USAID, which when they withdrew a year. When that withdrawal happened, because a lot of those things from development partners were funding public health programs like vaccinations and other things, HIV programs and all those things. we found money and we were able to keep these programs going. So that tells us that we can do without these programs. But more importantly, if you take away that amount of money and in return, in 2024, for example, the total disbursement from the U.S. government was $96 million. And they are telling us to sign this thing for 109 years. So it comes to just over $26 million US. Yes?
Yeah, I lost you at a point. I can hear you now.
Can you hear me? Yes, I said if you look at it, after taking away that amount of money, they now are giving us 109 million US dollars over 5 years, which is about 26 million US dollars a year, which comes to 75 cents per person a year in Ghana because our population is 33 million. Are we honestly saying that is what the average Ghanaian's health data is worth in an era where the new oil, the new gold is data, and in an era where data is king? Is that what we're saying? And then you have to look at the pharmaceutical implications thereof, form of medicine, what is called individualization of care. What do I mean by that? We are moving from one size fits all. Oh, you've got hypertension and we can just prescribe you, let's say, amlodipine or bendrofluoride, to trying to individualize it based on your own genetics, your own environment. So a lot of pharmaceutical companies are looking for bioinformation from sub-Saharan Africa because there's not a lot of research data in that sector for pharmaceutical research and development. That is going to yield these companies, if they come up with novel medicines, millions and billions of dollars. And they are saying that we have no right to whatever accrues thereof. Why would we want to sign something like that? So for me, the more I read the document and I juxtapose it to the America First document, I see that no, anyone who signs this is basically signing Ghana's death warrant. And you know, 25 years is a quarter of a second to leveraging. How honestly want to do this? Do we honestly want to do this?
Thank goodness we didn't sign it, some will say, but I'm just imagining what would have happened if we were tempted by the $109 million and had gone on to sign this.
You see, that is why in every contract, I always say read the small print. And I would honestly salute those who didn't sign this document. Because at the end of the day, the more you read it, the more you realize the risks thereof. Yes, you might look at 109 million as a lot of money. Right. But in the wider context, if you reduce it to each Ghanaian, it's 75 cents, for God's sake. Are you saying your privacy, your health data, your genetics is worth 75 cents a year over 5 years? Is that what anyone wants me to believe? And these are the things. That's why I say you read a small print. Looking at 109 million, it looks like a lot of money. And I cannot fault anyone from saying that. But when you divide it by the number of years this would run over, and by the population of Ghana, assuming even our population growth rate of 2.1% is tagged off and said that our population is going to be stagnant at 33 million, it's peanuts. Right. Put it in context. Ghana's health expenditure per capita is $101 per person per year. $101 per person per year. To collect all that data, that is what the state is investing. And you want to reap the benefits thereof with 75 cents per person per year? Who does that?
That's quite interesting. Do you think that the U.S. will fail to give up and will try to present us with a better, a much juicier offer, looking at how we rejected this one?
Well, at the end of the day, these things are negotiations. This has been rejected. I mean, you see, and there was some amount of, for want of a word, condescension from the United States. You label this as a bilateral agreement, but you write it unilaterally.
Yeah.
How can that be? That's condescension. You label something as a bilateral agreement, and then you write it unilaterally and say, no, I wouldn't allow a technical working group to work and look at these things. So basically, that is not bilateral. That is take it or leave it. And so you are better off leaving it. So yes, if they come back again, then we would probably have a better conversation. If something is going to be drafted, because look at it again. When you talk about something being bilateral, there needs to be reciprocity.
Yeah.
That means I give you something and I get something in return. So at the basic, is the United States also going to give Ghana or the Ghana Health Service or the Ministry of Health access to their health data for 25 years? If no, why?
That would have even been 20 years.
Because it's a bilateral agreement.
20 years more than the agreement would have lasted.
Yes. Yes. And we are not even looking at our health data. I've only specifically spoken about the biological data.
Right.
But what about our health data? Yeah. Things that sit on Ghana's Health Data Exchange and all those things.
Interesting there. Dr. Kwame Sapon-Nasiru.
Already, we are grappling part of it still not being available. Have we not learned any? Have we not learned anything from it?
Indeed. Those are pertinent questions there. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon, Dr. Kwame Sapon-Nasiru. He's a CDD fellow. Let's head to the presidency now, where President John Mahama says construction works under the West Africa Coastal Areas Project are expected to begin soon, assuring residents that efforts are being made to speed up work to address ongoing coastal erosion challenges in parts of the Volta region. Speaking during a visit to affected coastal communities, he said the project had experienced delays in 2024 due to the election period, but has since resumed. The WACA project, supported by the World Bank with a funding envelope of $150 million, is designed to protect vulnerable sections of Ghana's coastline, stretching through areas including Ketu South and parts of Alnoga. Planned interventions include the construction of sea defense structures, installation of groinings to reduce wave impact, and ecosystem-based measures such as mangrove restoration and coconut tree planting to stabilize the shoreline.
All this area is part of a project area that is called WACA, and it's a World Bank project. We already have done some work ourselves. Earlier, when I was president, we did the Akleotoko sea defense, all that area. Before that, Rawlings government had done the Kita sea defense, and then we also did Blekusu 1, and then Blekusu 2 is currently ongoing. The rest of the coast is supposed to be covered by the World Bank $150 million WACA project, and that includes this area all the way to Ketu South and parts of Angloga. And so, as the minister told you, there's going to be sea defense, and there are also going to be groins built into the sea to break the currents, the strong waves, so that it will come back to the coast in a very gentle manner. There will also be planting of coconut trees on the beaches in order to stabilize the soil. They would also help with planting of mangroves in the estuary to defend the land against the sea's encroachment. The project stalled for a while in 2024, mainly because of the elections. And then when we came, we continued it. And so I'm happy to announce that the feasibility study is finished. They are at the design stage. After the design stage, they'll do the procurement. That is the actual construction of the WACA project. And so I'm sure that very soon, we'll try and speed it up. Very soon, you'll see that work will start on your coastal area. We try to repurpose some of the World Bank projects, but as the minister said, we protected the 150 million that is meant for the Waka project. So your money is safe and the project is going to go on. Some of the other World Bank projects stalled and the money is being repurposed for other important priorities. And so I just want to ask for your cooperation as we continue the processes to do the work. But in the meantime, we will contact VRA to see if they can do some dredging in the main estuary so that it eases the pressure on this side. Normally, when the estuary is silted, then it looks for ways to join to the sea in other places. That is what is happening exactly here. But if we dredge it, it allows more water to flow out of the water into the sea. So we'll take immediate measures to try and reduce the effect. But the long-term solution is the World Bank project, which we're about to start.
Well, beach sand mining is emerging as a new form of galamsey along Accra's coast. One hotspot is Koligono, where miners dig and haul sand daily, some even molding blocks right on the shoreline for sale. Coastal scientists warn that if these activities continue unchecked, a major disaster is inevitable. Emmanuel Jivenu has more in Joy News' series, When the Sea Comes Home.
Saki Otokuno has worked this beach since he was a child. This morning, like many others, he's back at the shoreline, filling sacks with sand from the same sea he says has always provided for him.
Yes, no warriors for you. Yeah, be our galamsey. Here is our rare Accra galamsey for here because our pickers they don't get something for job. If you finish school, you don't get nothing. If you go work, they don't collect you. If you go say you know nothing. Collect sand in my time now. I'll be 46 years guy. I was born 1976, 12 February. I'm from Jamestown, British Accra. I know many things in Accra. The time I start beach camp, that I was 6 years. People they collect sand. They collect sand, I grow, see the sand, the sand be Gary, government leave us for us.
Across Koligono, men move in and out with sacks, working quickly before the tides shift. For many here, this is a daily source of income.
The sand way there, it be our food. It be Accra people, them are food. Gang people, it be our food. If you go away, we don't get nothing. We they can't take the sand, go sell some. Let dig the sand. Then the sand inside girl. That is sometimes if they don't make about they dig the sand inside. So which will they dig and get more this thing, money to feed ourselves. So leave the sand matter for us.
But the work no longer ends with digging. The sand is now processed right here, mixed with cement and molded into blocks, ready for construction. By turning sand into blocks at the beach, the trade continues in plain sight, even as enforcement tries to clamp down. The form may have changed, but the coastline is still being stripped.
What some of them are doing now is take the sand, mold a block there. So if they are taking blocks away, it is not sand they are taking away, but blocks. But in any case, once you pick the sand, you are mining sand, or you are collecting or mining for sand. So the impact is still the same, because you are depriving that system of the amount of sand that it needs. And again, as you continue mining for sand, you are also creating a pathway for the waves to now move more inland.
Ni Ayi does not wait. Once the blocks are ready, they must move. From here, The sun travels into homes and buildings, many of them rising along the same coast, now struggling to hold its grounds. Jonah is a fisherman, but fishing alone is no longer enough. When the sea does not give, he turns to the beach sand. For him, the sea has always had limits, and he does not believe collecting beach sand is the problem.
Okay, but make you get see na lo. Do you know ni ani so ba mam. Ami pi na me mama tuje mami. Abi amaga shi ko shi apel you know ni akemalo. Oye ka ma ga je so you know ni fiti oni bi agile. Wo we sha so you know ni ikla ho.
Along the Kolegono beach, the coastline is shifting. Buildings now sit on weakened grounds, their foundations exposed as the sea inches closer. The sand that once absorbed the force of the waves is thinning out, leaving the shore more vulnerable with each passing day. Coastal scientist Professor Akufo-Addo says once the balance is broken, the impact shows quickly.
People may say, oh, well, that we have abundance of sand and this, but the sand is also acting as a buffer. Okay? It protects the development behind the beach. So if you remove the sand through taking them away or through molding blocks or doing otherwise within the coastal areas, what you are basically doing is that you are depriving those development from the buffer that will prevent the impact of storm, the impact of high tides, the impact of erosion. You are depriving them of that natural barrier or the natural defense system. And once you deprive them of that natural defense system, it may not be now, but probably in the very near future.
Ghana's coastline is retreating steadily, with some areas losing meters each day. In extreme cases, erosion has reached up to 17 meters in a single year. But here at Kolegono, that reality feels distant for many.
No one panya fa be was some on ye no what tell you on your fair ni no fear for a gun nyani la kan libi amomashi ni won wo kainye ni won wo bi ke wona bi fen akainye ni mamashi gaje la kan ele wo ba dodge apakanshi ejake nyenyenye yu awo kumo gagbone aye ni gbon ye ni yemi ni gamen pin gamen wo ko le na gamen wo choko gamen wo e ko me basabasa wo gamen minimi wo yo chame nyegbere anyema la ka wo ti gan wo ji apakanshi ye fenye ba gbegbe wo kwenye wampo.
The sun is taking every day, and with each load, the coast is losing its defense. The ground is weakening, and the sea is advancing. If nothing changes, a major disaster is bound to happen. Emmanuel Jivenu, Joy News, Kolegono, Accra.
For many residents in the Savalugu municipality of the northern region, getting clean water has become a serious daily challenge. Women and children wake up very early each morning and walk long distances just to find water for drinking, cooking, and other household needs. What should be a basic necessity is now affecting health, family life, and local economic activities, as many women spend most of their time searching for water instead of working to support their homes. Mahmoud Mohammed Nuruddin has more in today's climate evidence.
Water scarcity has become a major challenge in this community. If not for the dam, residents would have no alternative source. The dam has become the only lifeline, yet it urgently requires dredging. In Savilugu municipality, getting clean water is no longer easy for many families. It is now a daily struggle. A resident, Fulera Napari, says the water they collect is not fit for direct use. Access to clean drinking water has deteriorated significantly. The water has become muddy and clay-like, forcing residents to let the sediment settle and attempt basic purification before using it for cooking. Even then, it remains unsafe for consumption. That is the reality for many households. For Abdullahi Asana, a mother of 6, the situation is even more difficult. The need for dredging the dam cannot be overstated. If properly dredged, it could retain water for a longer period, possibly lasting until the next rainy season. However, if nothing is done, it may dry out completely, leaving residents with no source of water as there is no functioning pipe system to rely on. The community depends on the dam, but the same water is shared with animals, making it unsafe. As Sana says, access to pipe-borne water would solve the problem. We share this dam with livestock. If there is a separate one for animals, it would be healthier for us because humans do not contaminate the water the way livestock do. Animals drink from it and also defecate in it. Unfortunately, there is no alternative, so we all depend on the same water for domestic use. This leaves us with no choice but to use the water that is not clean. If we had access to safe pipe-borne water, it would greatly improve our health and living condition. The crisis affects health and livelihoods as many, especially women, spend hours searching for water and now depend on unsafe dam sources because they have no other choice. Experts say the situation is getting worse because of changing weather patterns. Rainfall is no longer reliable. Sometimes it delays, sometimes it ends too early. At the same time, rising temperatures are causing water sources to dry up faster. Associate Professor at the Center for Climate Change and Sustainability Studies at the University of Ghana, Yao Agyeman-Rawlings, says,
GMET has shown that in many parts of the northern Ghana, the amount of rain that is being received is not the same. In many areas, it's less than they usually get. At the same time, in some places, it's more than what they usually get. And so with that, it means that areas that usually typically should get some amount of rain to farm, they don't get that amount. In some areas, they get a lot, but they are not prepared. What happens in this case also is that because people's timing for the rain has changed, the time that they expect the rain, they don't get it.
Hydrogeophysicist with Primox Technology, Mohammed Abdul Mumin, says the nature of the soil in the area also makes the problem worse.
Savilugu is like, it's similar to Tamale here, extending up to somewhere Saraga side. It has this particular soil type we call shale. And shale is one of the most dangerous type of soils we encounter at drilling sites. It sucks water like something. And as part of what I was talking about earlier, the issue of resistivity differences. Shale is a very loose soil or rock, but with also a very low resistivity. So it goes to look similar to the resistivity figures of water itself, and sometimes even lower than water.
Mr. Abdul Mumin explains why drilling for water is difficult.
So you do the prospection, the device will tell you, okay, this is a low resistivity zone. So there is likelihood that water will be there. But because of the presence of that particular soil there, water cannot sustain there. Water cannot be stored there. So definitely you're going to hit dry.
As changing weather patterns continue to affect rainfall and increase heat, communities in Savilgo are feeling the impact every day. A report by Mohamed Nuruddin.
This story is brought to you by Joy News in partnership with CDKN Ghana, University of Ghana Center for Climate Change and Sustainability Studies, with funding from Claire R4I Opportunities Fund.
From the Western region, let's head to the Upper West region, where Wa High Court has affirmed the decision of the Wa Circuit Court in the defilement case involving Rashid Ahmed Anata. The court, presided over by Justice Osei Wusuentri, is hearing an appeal filed by the disgraced popular Islamic word and ceremony manager who was sentenced to 22 years in prison in October 2023 for defiling 3 girls on 6 counts of defilement. Our resident correspondent, Rafiq Salam, is joining us all the way from Wa. He was in court and he's telling us more. Rafiq, what can you tell us? What transpired in court today? Unmute your microphone so we can hear you. Hello, Rafiq.
Hello. Are you hearing me?
What transpired in court today?
Hello.
I can hear you.
Okay, I can report to you that what transpired today at the Wa High Court was that the case that Rashid Ahmed Anata, who was sentenced to 22 years imprisonment with hard labor, today has been affirmed by the Wa High Court. Remember, this case came into being somewhere around 2023, and then also the accused person, Rashid Anata, was jailed for 22 years. This is a popular MC, Islamic wedding in town, and so it was really a high-profile case in Wa, and at that time, the court at the Circuit Court was really safe to the rafters. But at the end of the day, he was sentenced to 22 years in prison on 3 charges of defilement. So the first charge was 8 years, second charge 7 years, and then the third one 7 years. So when you total all the charges, it was 22 years. And so he didn't agree. He was not satisfied with the ruling of the Wa Circuit Court, and he took the matter to the Wa High Court, and which the judgment was ruled on 1 of 3 cases that were brought before the court. And so there were 3 cases, and then the judge was only able to rule on 1, and the rest of the 2 will come on June 19th. But for now, one of the cases of defilement against Rashid Anata was 8 years, and then they affirmed the decision of the Wa Circuit Court.
And Rafiq, what was the mood of his family and supporters after the affirmation?
The mood in court was part of the somber and also was in tears. Many of his supporters and his family members were really in tears, and then they were just wailing at the court. They weren't really happy with the judgment that was given today.
And when are the 2 defilement cases next scheduled to be heard?
From the court, we were told that the judgment for those 2 cases will come on June 19, 2026. I remember this is a high-profile case which the whole of the region and beyond were really interested in. Anata was accused of groping and also defiling 12 girls, 12 minors, but the state prosecutors narrowed those charges to only 3 girls, and then sentence was pronounced on him 3 years ago.
Rafiq Salam, thank you very much. That's our resident correspondent in the Upper West region. The Minister for Roads and Highways, Gavin Kwame Agboja, has announced plans to construct a road network to the Sewa Regional Hospital as part of efforts to operationalize the facility to reduce the growing burden on the Akufo-Addo Teaching Hospital. The minister made this known during an inspection tour of the ongoing Swami Interchange project in the Ashanti region.
The
link from the interchange towards Mampong. We just use that road now in a very terrible shape in terms of the traffic volume. So like I've been saying, even if we had completed the 4th year without doing that road, we're not going to be able to deal with the issue. So we are very intentional about what we want to do in Asante-Manda, and even some other linked roads linking the interchange here, and some other projects within the metropolis that are necessary. This morning I had a discussion with the contractor and agencies regarding the road leading to Sewia. President Mahama intends to make that project completed within the shortest period of time. As you know, GE is in a bit of distress. It is not really fit for purpose in terms of a hospital befitting Kumasi. That is why President Mahama was doing Sewa in the first place. That project is nearing completion. We need to do the road linking to Sewa to be able to fully utilize it. So the attention of Asante-Manda Kumasi is fully within the scope of President Mahama, and we are not going to take off our attention. We are going to make sure that all this is done within reasonable time.
We stay a while in the Ashanti region because the acting chairman of the Kumasi Presbytery of the Global Evangelical Church, Reverend Emmanuel Kwame, has made a passionate appeal to the government to fast-track the passage and implementation of the anti-LGBTQ bill. Speaking at the 2026 consultative conference, he observed the passage of the bill will critically safeguard the values and practices of faith in Ghana. The following report has more.
Ghana's parliament has been holding stakeholder engagements on the Proper Human Sexual Rights and Ghanaian Family Values Bill, also known as the LGBTQ+ bill. Parliament hopes to finalize the legislation as all key stakeholders are allowed to propose amendments to the initial bill, which did not receive presidential assent. The Kumasi Presbytery of the Global Evangelical Church, made up of 43 districts from 8 regions, wants a speedy passage of the bill. Reverend Kwame Mojo, who is optimistic of the passage of the bill, is reminding the President to fulfill a campaign promise he made to fast-track the passage.
We want to appeal to the government to fast-track the process of anti-LGBTQ++ bill. This is also critical to us as Christians, as Christian nation, because it truly indicates our values and our practices as we follow Christ.
The Global Evangelical Church has also called on President Mahama to take decisive action to halt environmental degradation. The church observed illegal mining operations have destroyed the environment while water bodies are gravely polluted.
Under the leadership of President John Dramani Mahama, Ghanaians are hopeful to see decisive action taken to halt the menace of environmental degradation and pollution of our water bodies caused by irresponsible mining activities, particularly or popularly known as galamsey.
Meanwhile, the Global Evangelical Church prayed for peace in the Middle East conflict, urging America and Israel to implement a ceasefire. From Kumasi, for Joy News, Oyinteria reporting.
The Food Discourse, an initiative under the Youth in Agric and Food movement, has marked this year's Earth Day with a practical training program for farmers and young people in the Upper East region. The event brought together local farmers, young people, and partner organizations to spotlight sustainable food systems and equip participants with alternative livelihood skills, including fish farming. Correspondent Albert Soare reports.
The two-day event to mark Earth Day 2026 began with an engagement with agroecological farmers in the Upper East region, focusing on food sovereignty and climate resilience. The event served as a platform to translate those conversations into action. A fish farming training was also organized, targeting both local farmers and young people, particularly recent senior high school graduates with a strong interest in agriculture and community impact. Organizers of the event, the Food Discourse, an initiative under the Youth in Food and Agriculture Movement, YOFAM, said the program also aimed to bring young people into conversations around food sustainability. Gloria Ejari is the founder and host of the Food Discourse.
We believe that we don't only listen to the farmer's story, but we also give them something else to add to what they do. Considering the fact that climate has now become a major block in the work they do, that they have to depend on nature before they know their next steps. We thought that they need something to substitute the work they do, the farming work they do, so that whenever they are out of season, they can depend on this fish farming to support their families. So we collaborated with Akofresh, that is into post-harvest management practices, and they were even here to train our farmers in how they can adopt some of these easy strategies, modern strategies to preserve their produce.
The training was delivered in collaboration with Latman Farms and the Navrongo Bolgatanga Catholic Diocesan Development Organization, Nabokado. The managing director of Latman Farms, Gabriel Latte, who facilitated the training, highlighted the region's untapped potential in fish farming.
Now, if they are to consider fish farming in this area, one, there isn't a lot of competition over here. Two, there are lots of nutritional needs when it comes to fish also in the northern parts of Ghana. And so if you are to set up a business in any of these, to provide for any of these communities, already there is a certain level of desire and demand for fish. And so any participants who I've trained today who decides to start fish farming is going to be a little bit ahead of the curve when it comes.
Participants expressed satisfaction with the training, describing it as both timely and empowering. Some of them indicated their readiness to apply the knowledge gained and share it within their communities.
In 1925, I started fish farming. When I started, because I didn't know much about it, I didn't go for training, I was not well equipped. All of them died. So my expectation when I was coming for this training, I was coming to equip more, like to get more training to restart again. And when I came here, I actually met my expectations.
Of course, I was already into fish farming. I was happy to be part of the program. I was able to get to know about the feeding aspect, and then there's also stocking. The time, consider the weather, temperatures, and all that, how they can affect your feeding of the fish and other stuff.
Reporting for Joy News, Albert Sori, Bolgatanga.
Authorities at the Oforokrom Municipal Assembly, in collaboration with the Kingdom Congress Network International, have sensitized first-time candidates for the 2026 Basic Education Certificate Examination BEC to enhance their preparedness for the examination. The municipality has registered more than 3,000 students for this year's examination, which is set to take place nationwide from Monday, the 4th of May to Monday, the 11th of May. As the time draws ever closer, the young candidates have been equipped to remain focused, disciplined, and well prepared for the examination.
The student engagement event was organized by the Kingdom Congress Network International under the theme The Victorious Army, to address persistent student inability to make up grades into secondary school due to ill preparedness. This year's edition of You Shall Excel Conference for JHS candidates aimed to enlighten, empower and encourage final year junior high school students as they prepare for their examinations. The program also provided guidance on senior high school selection and career pathways post-examination. The Oforoko Municipal Director of Education, Mrs. Dorothy Apare-Beidou, urged students to approach the exams with diligence, self-discipline and a positive mindset, emphasizing that these qualities are key to their success.
As I was speaking, I told them they are victorious army, and any army has to prepare, so they need to prepare very well. Already we have taught them in the classrooms, but also we need to, they themselves, they should be disciplined and they should have positive mindset. They should know that they can do it. They can do it. They have succeeded. But if they put entertain fear, it means that at the end of it, or they will go to the examination hall, and then whatever they have learned, they may even forget. But when they have positive mind, with discipline, they will be able to make it. Determination and then focus, they will be able to make it. So we have come together to encourage them to do what is expected of them to do.
Further called on examination supervisors to uphold their responsibilities and ensure a fair and more practice-free examination process.
Sometimes supervisors also allow the student to cheat. So I have called them, we have come together, we have told them that they shouldn't allow the students. They shouldn't entertain phones in the class examination hall. They are supposed to go and do the work because they should know that they are doing the work for me. At the end of it, or if they go and allow the children to cheat, it is going to affect the whole municipal. So I have called the supervisors, I have spoken with them. I'm here to do that of the invigilators. So we are also going to meet and then.
Convener of Kingdom Conquerors Network International, Maxwell Opoje, also raised concerns regarding the increasing use and potential addiction to social media among students.
I want to use this opportunity to also emphasize this. We have a moral challenge. We have a moral challenge among the youth of Ghana. And that moral challenge, the government of Ghana cannot solve it alone. In fact, the government is not a moral agency. The government is a policy agency. They formulate policies to govern the nation. They are not moral agencies. The church is a moral agency. So it means the government and the church must partner to forestall the moral corruption destroying the youth of our generation.
For joining us, my name is Clinton.
Work enforcement is undermining child protection efforts in Ghana despite the existing laws. The chairman of Parliament's Human Rights Committee, Ernest Yawenim, says the focus must shift to accountability and proper funding. Speaking at a National Child Protection Workshop here in Accra, he warned that lapses in implementation continue to expose children to abuse and neglect. Evelyn Ampao reports.
Child trafficking, child labor, and abuse continue to affect many children in Ghana despite existing laws and policies. In several communities, children are still found in hazardous work while the child protection system continues to face funding and enforcement challenges. According to the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection, child labor remains a major challenge in Ghana, with about 1 in 5 children aged 5 to 17 engaged in work, often in dangerous conditions. Alexander Sifabwedu is the National Director for the Department of Children at the Ministry.
Approximately 28% of children aged 5 to 17 are engaged in child labor, with a significant proportion involved in hazardous conditions across fishing, agriculture, mining, and informal sector activities.
Chairman of the Human Rights Committee of Parliament, Ernest Yawenim, says Parliament will enforce sanctions against child protection agencies that fail to implement directives on child welfare violations.
Let me be clear, accountability without consequences merely advice. When child protection agencies fail to implement audit recommendations or ignore parliamentary directives,
this committee will not hesitate to invoke its powers, including summoning accounting officers and, where necessary, recommended sanctions.
He also stated that the problem is not lack of laws, but weak implementation and inadequate funding, which continue to undermine children protection efforts.
We believe that it's not government alone that can lead this fight. The laws have been made, but when it comes to implementation, there are several challenges. Even at the ministries, budgetary constraints becomes a problem. So laws are passed, implementations become an issue. And that's something that we are advocating, that the right budgetary allocation be made for child protection, such that ministries and agencies that are responsible for the implementation of these policies are able to implement them.
The 3-day workshop is expected to produce stronger strategies to tackle child protection concerns across the country. For Joy News, Evelyn Ampes report, read to you.
In more stories this evening, government is urging a rethink of workplace safety as it strengthens enforcement of occupational safety standards with greater attention on workers' mental health. It says workplace safety must extend beyond visible hazards to include psychological pressures that often go unnoticed but have significant effects on employee well-being and productivity. Michelle Latte reports.
Workplace stress is killing thousands across Africa each year, with over 174,000 deaths linked to psychosocial risk like harassment and job insecurity. Globally, the figure exceeds 840,000, according to the International Labour Organization. In Ghana, the issue is gaining urgency as the country marks the 2026 World Day for Safety, with calls for safer and more supportive work environments. The Minister for Labour, Jobs and Employment, Dr. Rashid Pelbo, says occupational safety must go beyond physical hazards to include mental well-being, warning that a modern economy cannot thrive under unsafe conditions.
Psychological hazards are real hazards. They are not vague concerns. They are not the soft edges of management. They are concrete, measurable, and consequential, and they deserve to be named. Excessive workload, harassment, job insecurity, unclear rules and unrealistic targets, bullying, threats, and intimidation.
A senior lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School, Professor Kwesi Amponsa Teria, calls for a comprehensive Occupational Health and Safety Act to make psychosocial risk assessments mandatory.
It is very important that as a nation, we enact a comprehensive Occupational Health and Safety Act that incorporates psychosocial issues. Let us mandate psychosocial risk assessment as part of the safety, health, and environment management systems.
Secretary of the Trade Union Congress, Joshua Ansah, says pragmatic measures should be instituted by employers to create safer working environments.
Supplying of PPEs alone is not the safety measure that we want. This psychosocial issue is very deep. If you really are confused, if you are really distressed, there's no way that I can do things right. So as workers, you call for very pragmatic measures, policies that can be more safety than as we witness now.
Retired Supreme Court Judge William Atuguba has criticized the NDC government's approach to governance, describing it as careless. He points to the party's earlier call to reset the judiciary while in opposition, noting that former Chief Justice Getu Tokonu was the only one removed. Speaking in an exclusive interview with Jema Apia, Justice Atuguba said judges with political alignments should be removed to sanitize the judiciary.
Now, I think that the NDC, often when they come to power, they are somehow careless about the governance system. I'm telling you this, careless. And I'll demonstrate. You are in opposition. You are fighting, hey, this part is not correct, this part is not correct, it ought to be this, we will ratify. Have they done it? Huh? Look at all the, you can go through all the shoutings they made against certain things they said were not going on. Have they confronted those things headlong and corrected them properly?
Which things are you talking about here?
All right. For example, you are talking of, judiciary. If they did their homework well and they track facts, is it only the Chief Justice who was the cause of unanimous FC? If you want to straighten the judiciary, you do it thoroughly. Those who were, intentionally aligned and caused that, you don't just take up the Chief Justice and leave them there. You've got to get them out and bring proper, independent and knowledgeable judges. Then it solves the situation.
How is that supposed to happen? How's the NDC supposed to make that happen?
Well, the NDC consists of a lot of the citizens of Ghana. When petitions come for removal, is it not from the citizens? Look at the citizens. They themselves were complaining. What facts that they had to complain with? Didn't they have the facts? And if they are in power, why are they not using those facts to clean the step? What is it?
The Supreme Court?
Yes, the judiciary.
The judiciary.
You've got to write it. You see, what they have to do, you don't victimize anybody. You don't remove anybody unfairly, because that too is wrong. But when you have evidence that somebody is intentionally politically, and you don't leave the person there simply because when you come to power now, maybe the person, you correct that thing properly.
Who is supposed to be removed that the government hasn't removed yet?
Oh, what I've said, haven't you understood me? I've said that this complaint about unanimous FC was not just the Chief Justice alone who was, she alone cannot be a unanimous FC. She was using some people, and some people were ready to go along with her. And if you can track that evidence consistently, you have to proceed and flush those out and bring proper people. You took the mistake. It will be wrong for them if they do that, and also bring people who are aligned to them. That is wrong. Bring independent and competent judges.
Attorney General Dr. Dominic Ayine has eulogized the contributions of the late Supreme Court Judge Nasiru Suleiman, describing them as invaluable to the judiciary and the nation. He made the remarks during the launch of a book written by the late Justice of the Supreme Court before his death. The following report has more.
Speaking at an event organized by his family to launch a book he authored before his passing in April 2025, Dr. Ayine said his scholarly insight and decades of experience shaped many and strengthened judicial procedures at the Supreme Court.
We gather here today not merely to celebrate the book, but to recognize and honor Justice Gbadegbe's contribution to the intellectual architecture of our republic. His Lordship Justice Gbadegbe has rendered a service not only to the bar and the bench, but to the nation as a whole.
He also noted that Justice Gbadegbe's book, Procedure and Practice in the Supreme Court of Ghana, serves as a blueprint for judges, law students and other legal practitioners, guiding them in the pursuit of professional excellence within the judiciary.
For us as legal practitioners, the book will surely serve as an indispensable guide, one that reduces costly missteps and sharpens advocacy. For judges, it offers a reflective companion to the daily work of adjudication.
The president of the Ghana Bar Association, Akufo-Addo, commended the family for taking the initiative to launch the book, describing it as a lasting legacy that will benefit generations of legal minds.
There are a number of people who have manuscripts and they die with their manuscripts. But they have done their father proud by making sure that book, whatever stage that it reached, is now in the hands of the legal profession and others. And I think we deserve a round of applause.
Former Attorney General Godfrey Yabodame, who also graced the occasion, emphasized the late Justice's immense contribution to Ghana's legal system, noting that his work will continue to influence judicial practice for years to come.
I think it's very important to indicate that the value of any book, no doubt, is in the strength of the mind that the man is for. And I have no doubt at all that the intellectual pursuit that we all know just about the way and for, as well as the procedure, know that will make this book one of the most valuable works in the history of this book.
The event not only celebrated the life and achievements of Justice Gbadegbe, but also reinforced the enduring impact of his work on Ghana's legal landscape.
In the United States, a child born with 6 fingers is treated within months, but in parts of Ghana, that same child can be hidden for years out of fear and stigma. At Agyeman Holy Family Hospital, one family chose a different path and sought help. A team of surgeons is now providing free pediatric care to children with such conditions. Nasiru reports.
It was the last day of the XO World Project Foundation's surgical mission. Nearly 100 children had already received free orthopedic and plastic surgeries. Cleft foot, cleft lip, bent contractures, but one case remains. A young boy born with polydactyly, 6 fingers on one hand. In many places, a simple fix. In rural Ghana, often a source of stigma. But today, it was just another problem waiting for a solution. Co-founder and CEO of the XO World Project Foundation, Colin Brennan, described the project as a life-saving mission between the team and the Holy Family Hospital.
This mission, it means everything to us. The partnership that we've developed with this hospital is wonderful. So we really work as a family together, and the growth that we have seen is huge. The level of quality of care that's being delivered here, we're really happy that we're part of that.
Dr. Colleen also wants to correct a harmful misconception about children born with deformities, noting that these are natural things.
Facial deformities, and this is something that can be easily fixed, and there's no direct cause. So a mother cannot cause this, and I think community should understand that this is just something when a baby is developing that nobody can really help. There's no bad omens.
Lead surgeon Dr. Stefan Cohen puts it in a much better perspective.
There's the same number of clefts in Ghana that there are in the United States. It's not a higher incidence. It happens at the same rate. It's just that in the United States, there's so many cleft centers that everybody gets fixed.
For Dr. Senyo Gudugbe, who is a senior specialist in the orthopedic trauma unit and head of the local team here at the Holy Family Hospital, this mission gives hope. The patients win, and so does the facility.
It's a mission that sort of fills a gap in the care that we are able to deliver to the population in the region. So anytime these doctors come, they help us attend to these children. For most of them, they don't really have any hope. So it's a collaboration that benefits first our children.
In just 6 days, nearly 100 children received new chances at a normal life. Sabit, Joy News, Tichiman.
It's a wrap for the pulse this evening. For more news, you can log on to myjoyonline.com. There you have it. Headline story this hour says Supreme Court dismisses Wesley Girl's objection to suit on alleged religious discrimination. Case to proceed. My name is Kenneth Jesse. Thanks for watching. Have a good evening.